Got my piece of plate that the U-bolts are going to mount to on the axle, and this plate is what will have a mount coming off of it that'll come over and mount the engine onto. I'm going to drill out a bolt pattern in this for the U-bolts to go through. There we go. Nice bolt pattern for the U-bolts to go through. Okay, so here's what I came up with. So I had salvaged the U-bolts off of this axle when we swapped it out because we put different ones in it. So I took that plate that we drilled bolt pattern into and go ahead and slid that onto the U-bolts. Ran the nuts down just a little bit. Took a measurement. I wanted to be about halfway in the threads. Didn't quite work out, as you can see. I'm about in the bottom third, but so I took a measurement from the back side here to the axle tube, and it came up with 3.5 inches. By the time I got done cutting my 3.5 inch radius and going through and cleaning it all up, making it fit around the axle tube nicely, I ended up with about 3.25 distance from the axle tube to here. Now I just have these nuts ran down tight. I'm gonna go ahead and tack weld this in place. So this is gonna be where the engine is actually gonna be able to be removable. So if I ever needed to, I can remove those 4 nuts, pull the U-bolts out, slide the whole motor off. If I really wanted to, I could swap it over to this side. Because I'm already gonna have the chunker over here, but after some discussion, I think I'm going to have a spiral splitter over there. I don't think the motor's going to be in the way on that side for the spiral splitter, but the option is there. If I ever need to move the motor for any reason, even if like, oh, I can't get the right length belt, I can take and move the motor closer or farther away from the tire and change to a different size belt. So that's what I came up with there. Now I'm going to build a mount after I get that tacked in place. We build a mount that comes up and off. The motor plate will be right there, so it lines up with the belt, comes over to the tire. That will be the drive assembly. Still haven't figured out the belt tensioner. Gonna get there, but this is where I'm at right now. Okay, so here's where I'm kind of at. So you can see how I orientated the belt, how I want it to sit, about where I want the motor to sit. After talking with Steve, and it was on my mind, the exhaust was going to be a problem putting the engine on this side, because that exhaust stock on the generator was flipped down and facing over. That would have forced the motor to sit over this way, solid 6 inches more, which I barely have enough room. If I cut that leaf spring perch off, got rid of the caliper bracket, and slid my motor mount all the way over here, it would clear, but then I would have my exhaust facing straight at the tire, also blowing right in the direction of the chunker, and I don't like huffing exhaust fumes while I'm working. So I was able to take the muffler, unbolt it. It does have one mount that was right here. It used to be over on this bolt. I just bent that up out of the way, took the whole muffler, rotated 180 degrees. Now it's facing away from the chunking action. And then I'm probably going to have a baffle right here that actually sends it forward, so it's away from the whole axle, whether I'm going to be chunking later on with the spiral splitter, or if I put a Reebok on here or anything. That option is open, and I won't have the problem with the exhaust. So the motor mount right now is bolted to the axle with the U-bolts, and underneath I have a chunk of C-channel. I could probably pull my welding magnet out of there. It's just tacked in place, and the motor is braced up, just sitting on an old serpentine pulley right now. Give me an idea how high I need it to sit up off of my C-channel here, which is mounted dead center in this plate, so I have the most strength all the way around. And then I'll end up having to nip off that U-bolt there because it's just touching the engine shroud. But if I cut it off, you can see I'll have plenty of clearance in there. 1/4 inch is as good as a mile, right? So now I got to figure out how the motor is going to mount on here, and the way I think I want to set it up, instead of going with a serpentine tensioner, because I don't want to buy any parts for this, I want to be able to, like I talked about in the last video, I have the option to move the motor. Now, if I bought a belt that was the correct length, this is just an old junky serpentine belt off that piece of crap Ford over there. If I bought a belt that was the right length for what I want right now, I could loosen up the U-bolts and tension the engine over this way to set my belt tension. Well, that sounds like a whole lot of messing around, loosening up 4 U-bolts, trying to slide the motor over, trying to get belt tension, getting everything tightened back up. By then your belt tension's probably too tight. Loosen everything off, scoot it over a little bit. That just sounds like a whole bunch of messing around. That doesn't sound fun. So I'm brainstorming right now. I have this piece of 5/8 ready rod and a couple nuts. And I'm going to find a way to mount that engine that it will be able to slide back and forth. And I'll be able to take this ready rod, I'll have a nut welded probably down on the C channel, and one of them on the end out here welded in place. So if I want to set the belt tension, all I have to do is tighten down the ready rod and it will slide the motor over, and I can set my belt tension just like that. Now I got to brainstorm, figure out how I'm going to do that. Okay, here's what I've come up with for what's going to be both the motor mount and the belt tensioner. So I have a chunk of that 5/8 ready rod. I have a nut welded on the end, so I made a bolt out of one piece. I got a piece of 1-inch square tube with a nut welded into the end of it. Then I've got a piece of 3/4 inch tube capped off the end of it. I left it open just in case I ever need to squirt grease, WD-40, whatever in there. So that will slide inside just like so, and this will get mounted, welded down to the C channel, and this piece will get mounted to the motor plate. So this will be hard mount on the axle, this will be hard mount on the engine. If I want to do any belt tensioning, there we go. There's the adjusting mechanism. Okay, so I got the lower mount welded in place. I had to move this C channel up a little bit. I wasn't happy with the clearance I was getting off of the U-bolts, and I didn't want to start shimming everything. This is already pretty light duty material. It's only going to be holding the motor 6 horsepower. I don't think it's going to go anywhere, but I didn't want to put any undue stress on this. So that's tacked in place. I got the motor mount tacked on the other side. So that's where it will sit. Motor will be bolted down right there. When I want to tension the belt, or if I need to loosen it off, just like so. The only thing I'm not happy with, my earlier idea of being able to switch sides with the motor technically will still work, but my tensioner would be on the inside. The other thing I don't like is these 2 pieces of tubing aren't a tight enough fit for what I want. So it's got some wiggle in it. We'll have to do something about that. Might just lay some beads on the sides, grind them down so it's a nice tight fit. Some quick little stipple welds all around. Face them off with the flap wheel. One hand this thing back together. There we go. Nice and tight. That's how it should be. Okay, got everything fully welded, all nice and painted. Got the motor bolted down. Tensioner's ready. I have a belt. It was $20 or $31 at Napa. Called a buddy of mine and gave him the measurements. Came out to 130 1/4, and he was able to get me a 6-rib 130 5/8. So that's why I'm glad I gave that thing so much adjustment. If I really needed to, I could even move the motor mount over and get more adjustment out of it, but this belt will be the one that's going to run it for now. I don't have the belt centered or completely tight yet because I still have a jack stand sitting underneath of the tire. So the next thing I need to do to finish up the motor install is just be able to spin that tire, make sure everything is happy this way, and gonna stay centered on the tire where I want it. Even if it gets a little off center, that's okay, because it's a pretty non-shouldered tire. But to be able to do that, I need that jack stand out, and that's why I'm already started the filming on the trailer. Thanks for watching, guys.